He can cook a shoe and it'll taste delicious. You don't even have to bring your own, he says. And that's neat. It's Tom White. This is Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Hey, buddy, welcome to Teaching to the Test Pattern. I'm Tom White, your host, and today's episode, it's part 2 of my conversation with Halston Ray from Halston Ray Media, and he is the producer for the Burtcast with Burt Kreischer, Wife of the Party with Leanne Kreischer, and Ron Futches's podcast. And when I say podcast, don't get hung up on it just being audio. Multi-camera shoot and audio with a multi-track recording, plugins, lots and lots of stuff. He walks us through his workflow in this episode, as well as things that we should be teaching our students when it comes to getting them prepared to be a content creator, which is what we should be teaching our students, as opposed to a broadcaster or a filmmaker. They need to become content creators. If you are looking to create content at your school and you don't know where to get started, or you're looking down the barrel of a new program and you are looking at a lot of money, you don't really know how to get started, Amatrace.com, AMITRACE.com. Construction-related equipment grants are a big thing here in Georgia when you get a new program or you get a new facility. And I will go ahead and tell you, I did not use Amatrace, and I had nightmares, because the company that I used would, in their packing, you would get a packing slip and it would be 37 pages. But also in the box, they put the picking slip, which I took pictures of just stacks and stacks and mounds of paper, and it was awful. And I regretted it. I wish I'd called Amatrace, because I know those guys are going to take care of me and get me exactly what I want. They're going to take care of me and things that I don't know that I need, and they're going to put me in a situation where I get to just not have to deal with receipts upon receipts upon receipts or just stacks of paper. They're going to give me a folder when it's all over with. Everything is going to be taken care of. Your serial numbers, everything is there and ready to go. So definitely go check them out, AMITRACE.com. Reach out to them and say, hey, here's what I want to do. And they're going to get you a custom quote, idea. They're going to walk you through and talk to you. They're not just going to pull a one-sheeter out of a rack and send it back to you. So definitely go check them out. But first, check out part 2 of my conversation with Halston Ray from Halston Media here on Teaching to the Test Pattern.
Teaching to the Test Pattern.
So let's talk about your workflow. And I'm assuming you don't book the guests. I'm assuming there's someone else that books the guests, correct?
Yeah, they have to do everything himself, booking the guests. They have an assistant that books the guests now. Yes.
Okay. Because that's one of the things that, with my target here being teachers, I wanted to make sure that they knew that your job wasn't to book the guests, but that there's another person there. What is, when you can meet and when you are in a face-to-face environment, what's your technical setup?
So I have a audio interface that it's a Focusrite Claret, 8 preamps. It's a Thunderbolt 18 by 20 audio interface. That just has a lot of preamps, so it can handle the SM7B mic, and that goes into my laptop, which is running tools, and I am putting everyone on a separate track so that I can mix accordingly. And then there's a headphone amp so that I can have headphones if they want. And then we have 4 Sony AX53 4K high definition cameras that I put these memory cards in. And they all have memory cards. And then I record the podcast while the podcast is going on, notes, or I'm Googling things that they pick up or questions that they have about facts or whatever it is. And and then they finish up, and then I the memory cards, and I put them in my backpack. I get an intro from Bert, and then I go home and then do all the editing and stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about next.
Yeah. So when you're editing, what softwares are you using for the video? We'll start with video for that first.
Final Cut Pro.
Okay. And then for audio?
Pro Tools.
Pro Tools. That's right. You said that a moment ago. And when you are cutting that, have you made notes as the show has gone as to kind of where you want to change your cameras?
No, I mean the cameras change based on who's talking, and if they're both talking at the same time, or I need to get a reaction of the other person while the one person is talking, then I'll do a wide shot. But there's a camera on every person, and then one wide shot for Bert and Leanne's podcast on Funches, and he has a one camera setup where he just has him sitting there, and then Reese did switch to 2 cameras and without a wide shot, but then the thing happened, and now we're doing everything over Zoom. So
yeah, the Funches podcast is interesting to watch on YouTube. I enjoy the simplicity of that show, especially in the early episodes. As you're editing, and obviously you're trying to get to who's speaking and that kind of stuff, how long is that taking? I mean, how long after a show is done does it take you to turn a final produced video?
I think it could take me like a full day to do. I can do 2 podcasts in a day. But if we're recording them that day, then usually I can only do 1, because it takes to export. Mm-hmm. Like these videos, I'm doing one now. It took me like 3 hours to export this video, and then it's another 2-3 hours to upload it to YouTube. So it takes a long time to do that sort of thing, just because podcasts are so long. They're 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours. And with the workflow I have, we do everything in the editing just so that it can be like as perfect as possible. I do a multicam editing function. Basically, I go back, I put all the camera angles into Final Cut. I edit each angle for coloring, cropping, adjusting, and then I edit the audio. I put all my plugins that I use for compression, limiting, EQ, gain boost, mastering, all that sort of thing, Pro Tools. I bounce that audio file, export that, put the audio on top of the video in Final Cut so that it sounds perfect and it looks perfect. And then I basically watch the podcast on Word, and I cut each angle based on who's talking. And so I can edit a podcast and it took to record a podcast. Mm-hmm. So if it's a 2-hour podcast, I can pretty much have it edited in 2 hours. Good. Mm-hmm. Also a pain in the butt sometimes, but I like it that way, because if we did it all live, there's more room for fix. Mm-hmm. And if I can do everything and make sure that it's perfect and everything is where I want it to be, kind of a perfectionist in that way, then that is what I prefer to do.
Gotcha. So but all of that pays off. I mean, you guys, the listenership and the viewership that you guys have, there's a reason you have that, and it comes in the quality of the content that they're continuing to receive.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of what you do?
I like there's nothing like being in the room with two of the funniest people in the world and listening to them talk. I mean, they do that for a living. They are the funniest people in the world. And it's just able to be there, be in the room with them and hear them talk to each other. That sounds as creepy as that sounds.
No, and honestly, that is why I believe that podcasting is so successful and continues to grow, is because, I've never met Bert, never met Leanne, I'd never talked to you before today, but you're in my car hours a day. And so there's that relationship, and I totally understand. I was talking with someone about just podcasting, and they said, if I ever meet somebody that I listen to, it'll be weird because I feel like I know them and they have no idea who I am. And
but at the same time, they do know who you are. I know who you are because you're just like me, because you listen to the Birdcast, and that's what I did. And that's what I do. And know the kind of humor you have. I know the kind of information that you're getting. I know you're probably into the UFC or Joe Rogan, or you know who Tom Segura is. You like comedy, obviously. So I do know who you are. And like the comedians know who they are too, because they are similar. That's why I'm drawn to them.
Gotcha. Sticking with that target audience, when you guys are editing and kind of bantering back and forth and coming up with ideas, are you thinking about that target audience, or are you just thinking about what's going to be funny for us or what's going to be entertaining for us, and us as the group meeting to talk? And do you just know that that's going to transfer, or are you thinking, okay, Tom in Atlanta is going to think this is great?
No, everything is in there. I don't edit anything out except for like information. So it's just what they talked about. It's just the full podcast. There's no edits unless they say like where their daughters go to school or something like that, or their address, so people know where they live.
How do you manage, you've got 3 shows and you're doing, you said it takes about a day to do an episode. How do you manage all of that in terms of time and just planning your day?
It's early mornings. Late nights, early morning.
So what's in that vein? What's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest challenge as a producer?
The late nights and early mornings. Big challenge. No. I probably ending it is on my schedule, but I just have to find a good balance on like keeping my mental health good and making sure that I don't burn myself out. Like I need to take days off if I need to take a day off. Today's Sunday. It's been a really long week. It's been a long month, and I just needed to do nothing. And I'm going to play video games and rest and try not to edit. I'll try not to.
What games?
Apex Legends.
Okay. I am the esports coach here at my high school. So I have dove into Fortnite, which was really quite easy. And I am working my way through League of Legends and Rocket League. Those are the 3 that we play. Those are the 3 we play here. So what should I teach my students about audio production in the format, or not even audio production, in podcast production, in the how could they be you in 5 years? What should I teach them to prepare them for that?
People skills, being able to just be normal, like just be a good hang. Don't be too overbearing. You got to be professional. and you got to make sure that you look professional and you act professional, because you're going into these people's homes a lot of the time. You're going to studios and you're going to be a part of their life. So as much as they are a client, it's much more than just that. It's a full on relationship and a friendship and like all that stuff. And you're part of the family. People just be like, understand that you are there to serve them. You are there on their schedule. You are recording their podcast, and my job just make their lives easier and put out the best quality that I can.
Gotcha. What should I never tell them? What would be the worst advice I could give a kid who's considering heading down this pathway?
Don't tell people to stay complacent, because once you stop learning about this stuff, you're going to fall, because it's constantly changing. It's constantly improving. I'm constantly learning about new plugins that the podcast, or different LUTs that might make it look better, or whatever it is. I mean, like, there's so much to learn, and you're never going to stop learning. And I learned that from a producer who mentors me, who's who has been learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. And like, he absorbs more from other people than he does giving it out. You know what I mean? He wants to go to school every day. And for school is YouTube University. Mm-hmm. You can learn anything on YouTube. You can constantly be improving your game, especially in the medical world, because there's so many how-to videos. There's YouTube channels where people are breaking down different pieces of equipment or different plugins that you can use to improve your content. So that's always changing. So do not stay complacent.
Excellent. What are 3 things that when someone listens to this, they're going to go, I didn't know that about him, about what he does?
I don't know, actually. I'm sure. I mean, you might not know the greatest job that I could have ever thought of. I have to maintain flexibility in my schedule. So that's a pretty big one. Yeah, I'm freelance and I don't have to work a day job, but I do have to get up and go record at the drop of a hat on some days. So, it's a full schedule with late nights and early mornings, pretty much 7 days. So it's, and, yeah, that's it.
All right. So what would you tell someone who wants to get started? If you were in my shoes as a teacher and you had someone who said, I want to be a video and audio producer and I want to crank out the best podcasts in the world, what would you tell them?
Learn how to use Pro Tools and how to use Final Cut Pro, because those are the 2 things that you need, or Adobe Premiere, or they're like the industry standards, like Logic Pro Tools for audio, or what's the video one for Adobe
Premiere?
Is that what it is? The Premiere,
yeah,
the video
for video.
Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, or those are the only 2 that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, those are pretty much
you really need to know.
Yeah, those are the ones that most people are going to turn to. And then for audio, you've said Pro Tools, and Audition would be another one.
Audition, yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, I totally appreciate you taking some time out of your Sunday of rest and video games, and spending some time with me. And I can't wait to share some insight into what you do with my listeners.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Teaching to the test pattern.
There you have it, part 2 of my conversation with Halston Ray from Halston Ray Media out of LA. And I want to thank him again for spending some time with me on a Sunday afternoon, keeping him away from his video games and his mental health day. That is something that we all need. And as an educator, sometimes we feel like we don't have time for that. So we need to make sure of that. Even the pros do it, as you saw or heard in that episode. Thank you so much for listening to Teaching to the Test Pattern. That's all I have for today. I'm super blessed and humbled to have you listen, and I was super blessed and humbled to have Halston on with me. Really kind of readjusted my attitude and got me fired up and passionate again about what I do. So I hope he did the same for you, and you could hopefully hear his passion in the conversation. Have a great day, and as always, go make some awesome.
Teaching to the Test Pattern.